1990s.
Perfect. Thank you, John. I'm going to share my screen. And here we are. And I'm going to, okay, maximize them. So I wonder if you're seeing them.
Yes, that looks fine.
Yes.
Perfect. Perfect. So as you were saying, I was searching for a retro PowerPoint template online, and I couldn't find them. So I had to search my own archives, and the oldest I could find were from the 1997. So it's not that incredibly retro, but also this prompted me to think that in fact we are losing some of our digital memories. And the idea of today is to focus on researching the very first museum websites. So trying to understand which were the first, and trying to understand the early trends that were on in those pioneering 2 years of 2-3 years of websites, and also to focus a little bit on the virtual museum phenomenon, because there were especially in the early years, many museums, and the Louvre is only the most famous case, were anticipated by virtual museums made by individuals. And finally, we would like to offer a foundation and a tool for other studies in this sector that we think that could be very, very interesting. Just a moment, sorry, I'm just okay. Here I am. Now I've got a better perception. And why? Well, the idea is that now it's the moment to try to retrace the story of the first digital years of museums, because direct witnesses are around and, well, are still around. I have to say that the pandemic really shocked me in a way that we saw a generation being very heavily hit by all of a sudden. And this really made me think about how we should really not waste our time and try to put together all the memories that we can put together while we are still here, basically. And also another thing that everyone working on digital history, and here in the EVA conference we have often talked about digital history, is that websites and digital documents are disappearing fast. I mean, websites are disappearing, and also digital documents are becoming more and more less readable. So this is also important. And then finally, researching this subject, me and my co-authors, we found only a very few books and papers on the subject of the early digital history of museums. So we really hope that they will, new papers and new books will could arise in these years, and try to fix some points about this history. And also because, well, of course, history is important, because really, especially history of technology, for people working in technology, really makes you understand also today's trends. And history is absolutely beautiful. So just a passion for the mind. Well, how did which was the methodology we used for this research? Well, we started by working on the museum websites themselves, because some museum websites have also an about section, and they recall a little bit of their history. We worked, and this has been a very, very valuable source, and also the people there has been very, very, very helpful. Museum Computer Network. Museum Computer Network is the historical museum digital conference in the US. Also, Museums and the Web has been very, very important, even if Museums and the Web starting in 1997. So Museum Computer Network is much older as a resource place. EVA London, of course, has been around for 30 years, and I know Jonathan will talk about that tomorrow if I'm not wrong. And then we also contacted direct witnesses and asked them for their memories and also for their documents. Finally, we conducted a little research on domain names registration, because trying to understand, for example, when Louvre.fr was registered, or other domains. The thing is that in this specific case, a domain name registration doesn't tell you anything about the website publication date, because sometimes you could register the domain name just to get the email. And so you could do it before you publish the website, or you could do it after you have published the website under another domain. So domain name registration are interesting data, but they're not definitive data. And finally, of course, you can work with a wonderful Internet Archive. The only problem with the Internet Archive is that it works quite well from 96, 97 onwards, not for the very early days. And also one problem with relying on the Internet only on the Internet Archive is that the Internet Archive tends to miss the images. It's quite good in saving the texts, but not the images. So again, it's a good source, but it's not the only one. So let's go and start with the first with the beginning of our story, of course, which is 91, the birth of World Wide Web. Of course, the World Wide Web was being built before. But on 6 August 91, we can see Tim Berners-Lee publishing the first website, who is still visible. And this is the very first website, so we can we can still today enjoy it. It's been built on this computer and the next, and this next computer. I have a personal memory about it, because when I was working at the Science Museum of Milan, we brought it to the Science Museum. We by car, basically. We went to CERN, got it, and got it back. Had it on loan for 3 months, and we also organized a web server on it. So basically, people, this was in 2000, people could connect to the very first web server simply by using a specific IP point. And this is just an example of how you can make history of technology by using the technology itself. And after that, the revolution begins. These are the websites at the beginning of the years. So we can see that 1992, 10 websites, 93, 130, and around the end, there were around 600. And then 94, we go in the thousands, and then it took off, basically. So let's talk about museum websites. Well, the very first museum, we can define it as the University of California Museum of Paleontology, which was launched in August 1993 by David Polly and Rob Guralnick, and they are both in this picture. And why we can say it was the first? Because in fact, talking with them, it appeared that there were only 2 museums before them, the Honolulu Community College and the Smithsonian. But the thing is that, and of course, when you talk about museum website, you've got to understand what do you intend by museum website. Well, they said basically that Honolulu Community College was just a page about dinosaurs, but not really a museum, while the Smithsonian was there before them, but they just made a Gopher to web conversion. So in fact, when we try to define the first museum websites, we should define the first purpose-designed museum website. In that respect, we can say that the University of California Museum of Paleontology was the first one. And we found on the museum website this as one of the screenshots from that year. So this could be a very, very intriguing and interesting screenshot. Then only a couple of months later, the Exploratorium came, December 1993. And it was launched by, it was first launched and built by Rob Semper. And talking with him, he told me that when they launched their website on December 15, 1993, there were only 600 websites, which is fantastic. And he recognized that Berkeley's Museum of Paleontology was already there, and then there was an exhibit page. We have to understand that sometimes exhibit page were there before the institutional web page. So maybe you made an exhibition and then you created the specific website for it. And this was, as Rob Semper sent me, the first website, the first homepage of the Exploratorium website. As you can see, they called it World Wide Web Server. So you focused on the server, but also, as you can see, you already can see, and that's the difference from the Berkeley Museum of Paleontology, that is quite an ample website. Of course, some of those are only links, like, for example, to the FTP server and to the Gopher server. But overall, we can already see a vision of developing it, of making it quite as big as possible. And the Exploratorium has been definitely one of the most important websites, especially in the first era. And what about the art museums? Because here we're talking about, so far, 2 science museums. Well, the interesting fact is that the art museums were not behind the digital revolution. For example, the first Museum Computer Network conference was held at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. And we recovered the original program. And the original program was very much focused on humanities, so on digital humanities in a way. And so apparently, art museums should have been the forefront of this, also the online revolution and the web revolution. The problem is that if we have a look at the first museum websites, so we can see that, for example, in the USA, there were the University of California Museum of Paleontology, the Exploratorium, as the Smithsonian. In the UK, and Jonathan has done some research on that, the Natural History Museum, the Science Museum in London, and the Museum of History of Science in Oxford. And even in Italy, where we were part of the first, we personally were, me and Stefania Boiano, one of my co-authors, were part of this history. The 2 museums were the Museum of History of Science in Florence and the Museum of Science and Technology of Milan, where we worked. This is one of the first homepage of the website I worked on. Very simple, as you can see. And so
Hello, I think we might have lost our speaker.
Yes, I seem to have lost him too. Is that the same for everyone?
Well, if he needs to rejoin, let's keep an eye on the
Okay.
pending. Yeah.
I mean, if he rejoins relatively quickly, he could. There he is. He's back again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Have you upgraded him to?
Is he already? I think he's already a co-host.
okay. Hello.
Okay, you got cut off.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't
Can
worry.
you at which slide basically?
I think the art.
The art. Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll try to restart.
Okay.
Can you? Okay, I'm going to share screen again.
Yep.
Sorry for that.
Don't worry, these things happen.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to. No. Sorry. I'm going to reshare. Okay, better. Okay. I don't know why.
We can see why science museums now.
Yes, I know. The only problem is that I can't go on with the. Well, Murphy is working very well now. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. So the idea is that science museums were not so primarily focused on the authentic and singular object like art museums. So this made it in a way easier to go on the web. Also because the science museum had probably much less problems about the problem of rights ownership and reproductive authenticity, while art museums were, especially initially, but also sometimes now, very concerned about the problems of right ownership. And we can see a whole different variety of approaches to this. Finally, well, I'm broadly speaking here, and of course there are many notable exceptions, but sometimes science museums can be more focused on education and sort of reaching out. And also some, for example, the Natural History Museum, but also the Science Museum, tended to have more technical stuff inside because they had much bigger collections and so a much more digitized collection. So technical savvy stuff probably was already there, already hired, and it was easier for them to try to experiment with the new technologies. The features of the new first museum sites were the fact that they had very simple layouts before the HTML tables were usable, were basically easy to be interpreted by the web browsers, because the web browsers were very important. It's interesting to note that if we have a look at the first papers, we can see that websites are called mosaic applications. They're not even called World Wide Web application, World Wide Web websites. So that's why how important the first browser Mosaic was for the development of the early web. They were very byte conscious. So the problem again with slow connections was to make images very light, very few, and everything was very skinny at the time. But they're willing to explore and experiment. Rob Semper, for example, was remembering how they really were tinkering with, for example, the video, trying to put the videos online, which before YouTube was really a difficult thing. But finally, they were easier to promote because there was much less competition. There was, after a while, there was a very big attention on museum websites. For example, the launch of the Smithsonian websites was a major media event, but also in the different countries. For example, also the launch of the Science Museum event was a major media event in Italy. And finally, we should have spend a few words on virtual museums, because, for example, the Web Louvre predates the official Louvre. So in 1994, a single individual made what he called the Web Louvre and just put some images on. And finally, the Louvre came out and said, "Okay, forget about using our brand, and we are going to put the website on, our website on." So there were individual initiatives, and the interesting thing that were altering the balance of power of the museum between the individual and the museum, and the idea of virtual museums, so having one single individual creating his or her own virtual museum, putting together the paintings they like, is still existing today. For example, Google Arts and Culture was created with the idea that to empower the users to create their own virtual museums. So this concept of virtual museum is still alive today. And finally, I would like to quote Walsh, who wrote in the first Museums and the Web '97 conference, that using the interactive potentials of the web to change the one-way flow of information from art museum to visitor to a two-way flow also was a great revolution. And the web will help the art museum to reinvent itself. So this idea of the alteration of the balance of power is very interesting and it was very present at the day. We felt that we were at the edge of a revolution. How much of it happened? Well, this is open to discussion. And that's it for me. I thank you, and I pass the word to Jonathan, also for his virtual library museum pages.
Okay, thank you very much, Giuliano. We've got one question here from Javier Perida. If you want to open up the Q&A
Fantastic
thing, and also if anyone in the audience wishes to type a question in, that's fine. You can do it at any time. We'll try and answer at the end if needed. You can also type in messages and chats, links, etc. So can you see the question, Giuliano?
Yes,
It's saying perhaps
Wikidata
Wikidata could work as the new repository to hold all the metadata. So.
Maybe who knows? Who knows? I think it's a very interesting question, intriguing questions. I don't know. Could be. I think could be a very good idea. I don't know. What do you think about that? I'm open to the discussion.
Well, from my point of view, because I'm a Wikipedian and I use Wikidata
yes, you
and
are,
update it, you know, data is already there. Anyone can add data to it. So I welcome anyone here who's interested in museums and wants to update Wikidata. You can go to the entry for the museum you're interested in and check that how complete it is. And if it isn't complete enough, add more data. That's what I do with things I'm interested in, museums and so on. So yes, it's certainly a very good repository. It's likely to be there for a long time. I'm at an age now where I think, well, what's going to last longer than me? Well, I think Wikidata and Wikipedia are going to last longer than me, so they're good places to put things that you want recorded for posterity. So we don't have any more. Yeah, there's no more questions just for the moment, but we can come back and have a discussion at the end if there are more questions. So I'm going to share